Salutations, gentle viewers, I'm George from Ireland. Here I am on Horseguards Parade in London. Well, so called because this is where the Horse Guards used to parade. There's the Household Brigade, also called the Household Division. Its motto is Septem Juncta in Uno, 7 joined in 1. So it's got 2 regiments of Horse Guards, the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. Blues and Royals are one. They were amalgamated in 1967. They used to be the Blues and the Royals, now they're Blues and Royals. So in their ceremonial uniform, the Blues, they wear Blues and Royals wear blue tunics, and the Lifeguards wear red tunics. No, not lifeguards at a swimming pool. So they're obviously guarding the royal family in London more generally. And then there are the 5 regiments of Foot Guards, but I shan't say too much about them. Coldstream, Grenadier, Scots, Irish, Welsh, that's in order of foundation. So indeed they do parade on this parade ground. No surprises there then. All right, so and that behind me, that is St James's Park leading on towards Buckingham Palace. So it's a royal park, no protests are allowed in there. The roads through here are red, they're royal roads, but the public's allowed to use them. There's a statue here of the Earl Mountbatten of Burma, who was Queen Victoria's great-grandson, the last Viceroy of India, the Supreme Allied Commander in Southeast Asia during the Second World War, Admiral of the Fleet, held various other positions, Governor General of Canada, and he was blown up by the IRA in August 1979 at Mullaghmore, which is in County Sligo. He had a holiday house there, went there for decades, and he was warned that the IRA might try and bump him off. Apparently they'd been a plan since the early 60s, but he said, what would they want with an old man like me? He was a pensioner, he was a tourist, he said he despised extremism of all kinds, and he had no objection to constitutional Irish nationalism. He just couldn't believe they'd lower themselves to killing an elderly civilian, but indeed they did, and a few other civilians with him, including an Irish child. There we are. So he's memorialised here, and this is behind that is the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Why is it Foreign and Commonwealth Office? Why not just Foreign Office? We often say Foreign Office, but really it's Foreign and Commonwealth. Again, there's this idea that Commonwealth countries are not really foreign to each other, but that is a bit of a myth, you might agree. So usually trespass is a civil matter, but in there it's a criminal matter. There's a little sign on the fence to that effect. A new law came in saying that in these certain secure zones, if you go in there, it's a crime. So this is the back entrance to Downing Street, or the back side, as Mitt Romney would say. So this security fence is fairly new. Anyway, it's a lovely park behind. There's some cafes in there, some with grass growing on the roof, and there's a little cottage beside the duck pond. What a delight it would be to live in that curious hermitage in the centre of this gigantic conurbation. Here is one of the unsung heroes of Ireland, Lord Kitchener, Victor of Omdurman, who went down with HMS Arthur when he was sailing to Russia in 1916 to consult with Britain's Russian allies. So there he is, a wreath at his feet. I shan't say too much more about him. And he had a magnificent house not too far that way on Carlton Gardens. So that is the garden of Buckingham Palace, not Buckingham Palace, I'm not talking about, the garden of number 10 Downing Street. You can see the high fence up there. And just about 3 weeks ago, Melania Trump was there for a children's garden party with Philip May, as in husband of the Prime Minister, Theresa May, but she's not Prime Minister for much longer, because Melania Trump is more comfortable in the presence of children, so they said. So US Embassy children and Downing Street staff children, they were there. So that's that. In John Major's autobiography, he opened the door and took a photo through. Sometimes they have cabinet photos in the back garden on rare days of good weather, okay? So another government office, you see up high, I wish I could zoom. You can see some of the crown motifs on the Portland stonework. The star and garter, another one of the royal symbols. Garter as in what a lady would wear on her legs if she's sporting very exciting lingerie. But in bygone centuries, it's actually quite an ordinary thing to wear. And more government offices. So there's the Queen's birthday parade takes place here. Her official birthday in the middle of June. Her actual birthday is 21st of April, if memory serves. There's also the Beating Retreat, another parade which is annual here. And sometimes if there's a state visit, the foreign head of state will review the troops. There'll be one of the regiments of Foot Guards that is there, and the foreign head of state will be followed by an aide-de-camp officer from his country. For example, when Putin came in 2003, it was a Russian army officer walking behind him, and he was led by a British army officer, and I think it was Prince Philip. The Queen never leads, it's Prince Philip or some other male member of the royal family. Okay, so this is another government ministry. I thought it was Dover House, but I think not actually, as in the Scotland office. Oddly, the door doesn't say Scottish office, but Scotland office. So look at this cannon, a gift from Spain after the Peninsular War. It's got the symbol of the Prince of Wales there, the words Ich den, I serve in Germany, as that was the motto of John, the Duke of Bohemia, and the Black Prince, who was also Prince of Wales, in the late 14th century. He liked that one, he took it for himself. And obviously the dragon is not originally part of the canon, I don't think. And then it's got a dedication in Latin saying the Spanish Cortes gave it because the Duke of Wellington had helped break the siege of Cadiz. And it was a present to the Prince Regent, the future George IV. The Prince Regent, that's George IV, he was ruling because his father, George III, was suffering a derangement of mind intermittently from 1788 onwards. But as his mental incapacity was transient, sometimes George III would resume full royal prerogatives. On other occasions, they had to be exercised on his behalf by his eldest son, George IV, even though father and son did not get along at all. So that's why that period, 1788 up until the 1820s, is known as the Regency. Then George III died. His son, George IV, inherited and ruled for a further 7 years before he too was called to meet his maker. Okay, so Roberts, another Irish general, okay, Roberts of Kandahar, who got to Afghanistan in 1879, although things didn't go very well after that. Yeah, even in Britain's imperial zenith, there were a few military defeats. So there, well, not just the battle like Isandlwana, but occasionally the whole war, like the first Afghan war, definitely absolutely ignominious defeat. The second Afghan war, a defeat not quite as heavy. The third Afghan war, a draw, but that wasn't brilliant. Okay, so he helped to found the Ulster Volunteers, and he died shortly after the First World War began. That's Roberts, an old Etonian. I read an autobiography of him, not an autobiography, sorry, a biography of him, said he was full of grit and go, so characteristic of the Irish nation. And he is honoured with a huge oil painting at School Hall at Eton. And School Hall was dedicated to the South African War, as in 1899 to 1902, well, commonly called the Boer War, as in against the Orange Free State and the Transvaal. But and that's why School Hall is a memorial building, and above it says the words Amor Patria Vincit Omnia, the love of country conquers all. Okay, well, I said it was Horseguards Parade, and you're about to see a member of the Blues and Royals. So what would, I mean, oh, I'd love to wear that. I'd feel very sex wearing that, wouldn't you? So there's a big jackboots, and you can see a royal coat of arms and his helmet, and then his plume and his sword. Don't worry, the sword is deliberately kept blunt just in case there should be any mishap. So he's guarding, because the entrance to a royal park, and they change every few minutes. He'll go, someone else come in, and you'll see them riding by. Okay, they've obviously clocked off already, but it goes back to Queen Victoria's day when she showed up here unannounced, and her soldiers were lolling around, chatting and smoking, and she said, "This is a disgrace, okay? You're guarding the entrance to my royal park, so you're going to have punishment parade. From now on, as a standing order, you have to parade from these hours in full dress uniform until further notice," and this has never been cancelled. And so here we are, well over 150 years later, it still goes on. So the Brigade of Guards, those 7 regiments, the 2 regiments of Horse Guards, and the 5 regiments of Foot Guards. And I'll show you, well, their symbol, their flag is like this. Is that navy blue, and there's some, what would I call it? It's some sort of dark red, you know, towards brown. And you can get ties like that. They wear Brigade of Guards ties. And then it's got a royal symbol. Ooh, is it showing it? Yeah. E2R, Elizabeth Regina, as Elizabeth the Queen. On y soit qui mal y pense, on the garter. Shame upon him who thinks badly of it, because I think it was Edward III, well, some lady's garter fell down and he picked it up and gave it to her. But of course the British royal family, kind of English royal family really, spoke French well into the 14th century, to the end of the 14th century really. So that's why he said it's not a lascivious gesture, me giving you back this garter. It's an exceedingly honourable thing to do, and in fact it's so noble I will found an order of chivalry, as in for knights, the Order of the Garter, OG. So if I was made one of those, I put OG behind my name, show I'm a member of the Order of the Garter, and that garter is their symbol. Okay, another General Wolsey memorialised here. I've been in here, the Household Cavalry Museum. Those two regiments I mentioned, the Life Guards and the Foot Guards, they're Household Cavalry. So you're getting an idea about Horse Guards. And on Remembrance Sunday, the nearest Sunday to the 11th of November, people remember the end of the First World War and all subsequent wars in which the United Kingdom has fought. And a gun goes off here at 11 o'clock precisely, and that marks the beginning of the 2-minute silence because, of course, the guns fell silent on the 11th of November at 11 o'clock in the morning, 1918. That was the armistice that kicked in. All quiet on the Western Front, as the German army report went. That's why there's the Erich Maria Remarque novel entitled All Quiet on the Western Front. So that is Dover House, the back of the Scotland office, if I've got that right. Okay. Anyway, and so this is another war trophy taken from Egypt in 1801, because of course Napoleon invaded in 1798, and then the British were allies. The Ottoman Empire came in and defeated him. Napoleon got a few of the Egyptians on his side. Look at the crocodile as in the symbol of the Nile. Then Lucy, look at Britannia with her lion beside the Nile, and she's pointing to the pyramids beyond. And then it's got the Royal Coat of Arms above the wheel. It's a bit difficult to show you from that angle. Then they've got a helmet and a sword towards the bottom, a sceptre and a mace, more royal symbols. So there's fascinating handiwork on all these things. Well, I hadn't even noticed that. Even in between the spokes of the wheel, perhaps you'll see a lion's head. So carved with loving care. And well, I'm not sure I'm going to make this out. There's Arabic calligraphy there on the brass on top. That's that. So many little particulars to appreciate. Right, now I'm about to show the old Admiralty building. I'm not sure what the wires are up top. Do they hang flags from it occasionally? So from 1622, that site was associated with the Admiralty because Sir George Villiers bought it. I can't remember the name of the house. It began something or other with W. Sir George Villiers, though, was made Duke of Buckingham. He was a favourite of Charles I. They'd been to Spain when they were trying to woo the Infanta, wearing false beards in 1624, and they behaved so disgracefully that the King of Spain had wanted the Duke of Buckingham executed. It didn't happen. Anyway, the Duke of Buckingham was in charge of this ill-fated expedition against Cadiz and that war, but that defeat and more taxation, that precipitated the English Civil War later on. But anyway, this building is much later, but the site, as I say, was associated with the Admiralty because the Duke of Buckingham, who was Lord High Admiral, as in he was in charge of the Navy. So perhaps I will go in for a closer look at the Admiralty building. Anyway, but it's actually now an extension of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, as in managing the country's relations with other countries. And then you'll see, we're going to see it, perhaps you can see the anchor as a symbol of the Royal Navy, some shells around it and other maritime motifs. And there's let me see, looks a bit like seaweed. A rope obviously entwined with the anchor, and there are a few more of them. So built in the reign of Edward II, perhaps you can see E2R up there, as in Edwardus, not 2, E7R, Edwardus Rex, Edward VII, King Edward VII, and on and on. So we can't go in for reasons you might guess. Just occasionally the naval board meets in the boardroom. So on the 21st of October 1805, the Battle of Trafalgar was fought off the coast of Spain, and the Franco-Spanish fleet was defeated. Much of it sunk. I don't think a single British ship was lost. So that was the finest hour of Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson. However, he was shot by a Spanish sniper, and he succumbed to his injuries some hours later, saying to one of his officers, "Kiss me, Hardy." Or was he actually saying Kismet, Hardy? Kismet, as in the Turkish word for fate. There's some debate over that, because he spent a lot of time in the Mediterranean, so might have acquired a smattering of the Turkish tongue. Or more poetically, people claim that his dying words were, "Thank God I've done my duty." He'd had the flag signal to all his ships. England expects every man to do his duty. Well, that was that. He had plenty of Irish sailors too. Some of them were Irish speaking, had to have an interpreter. So his ship was HMS Victory. Anyway, he died. A fast schooner was sent to Falmouth in Cornwall to deliver the news that a magnificent victory had been attained. However, Lord Nelson had been felled in his hour of triumph. So a dispatch rider went and had to change horses 21 times. It took him 37 hours to get here to the Admiralty to deliver the news. And that was that, and special newspaper editions were printed that morning to deliver the happy yet poignant tidings. So anything else I could point out about that? So that's the Admiralty, but in 1964, obviously the Royal Navy had been cut back so much, it was turned to Foreign Office purposes. So there's another little war memorial, there's so many of them around, and various coats of arms of various regiments. The British Army, of course, is tiny these days, only about 80,000 soldiers, and it's got the names of various, they built this more modern building so you can't really see some angles of it. You know, it's got Hood, Nelson, Howe, and various mottos that are so worn away. Can't read the motto of the Royal Engineers and so on. It's got, okay, war memorials like Gallipoli 1915-16, a battle honour, even though it was an Allied defeat. I shan't read the whole quotation from Rupert Brooke, who was, of course, a soldier of the First World War, and when the war broke out, saying, "Thank you, O Lord, who has matched us with this hour." And he felt elated that he's been offered this splendid opportunity to prove his virility. And he died in distinctly unpoetic circumstances of an illness on a ship off the shore of Gallipoli. It mentions Collingwood, who was Nelson's number 2 at the Battle of Trafalgar, who survived him, obviously had to take command when Nelson succumbed to his injuries. Salonika 1916, that's Thessaloniki to you and me. In Greece, Greece was neutral at that time. The United Kingdom even offered the Greeks Cyprus in return for a Greek declaration of war on the Central Powers, but the king at the time of the Hellenes, he was married to the Kaiser's sister Sophia, who was fairly pro-German. They were von Schleswig-Holstein von Sonderburg-Glücksburg. They were of Danish extraction, the Greek royal family, and the Danes and Germans mingled quite a lot, so he didn't, well, I won't go into it. Finally, he abdicated in favour of his son, who did declare war on the Allies, but too late to be offered Cyprus. That ship had sailed, and then his son died because he was bitten by a monkey, so that was the end of Constantine. King George I came back, and on and on. Of course, Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, he's related to them. His father was Prince Andrew of Greece, and his grandfather, that was that George I who I mentioned. Okay, so various regiments he's got here. The Bedfordshire Regiment no longer exists, the South Irish Horse. So like in 1922, most of these Southern Irish regiments, they were just all disbanded, and their silver still in the Royal Army Museum, National Army Museum I should say, Worcestershire, and on and on. Some of these I can't even read, Royal Fusiliers. So I wish they'd make this a bit more distinct, France and Belgium. Okay, so that's that war memorial there. And then this huge extension was built in the Second World War, very plain and functional, and deliberately had ivy growing on it so that from the air that would just appear to be a bit of the park and it wouldn't be bombed. But somewhat ruined the effect of the rear of this building, which otherwise would be decidedly visually alluring. So that's more or less the end of Horseguards Parade. Over there, I shan't bother. There's a permanent memorial, little book to all those police officers who gave their lives on the line of duty. Some of them murdered, some of them just killed in fires to rescue people, or chasing burglars over roofs and falling to their deaths. Sir Michael Winner was the brains behind that one. Sir Michael Winner was a multi-millionaire film director. Winner Takes All, his autobiography. He had that it girl, Lady Victoria Harvey, as his receptionist for some time. But he was a man with a great self-deprecating sense of humour. He was a hardline Thatcherite, but one of the few things he disagreed with Thatcher about was homosexuality, saying that gay people can be completely dignified, and he found those who bigoted against them to be really despicable. But he said that police officers are not sufficiently honoured for their gallantry, and there ought to be some sort of permanent memorial, so indeed that happened. So, well, the last thing I'm going to show you, crossing over this, I thought it was a royal road, this bit's not red, other bits further up are red. This is a bit of the Brigade of Guards, or the Foot Guards Memorial. Now, why have they put the wreaths up recently? Because VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, 8th of May, is not celebrated on an annual basis. Anyway, look at that. I shan't read the whole thing for you, but you see it's pockmarked. That's war damage from the Second World War, and they've deliberately not repaired it in certain places in London, such as here, to remind you of the Second World War. So that's that, and unfortunately it's largely eroded. So and they're not particularly in order. Okay, I'm just trying to think which one's which, because one of them is the Coldstream Guard on the extreme, well, this side I think, and the other one would be the Grenadier Guards. So the Coldstream Guard was the very first one, raised in the English Civil War from Coldstream, which is a river in the extreme north of England, near the Scots border. I know it's Cold Stream, but we seem to align the D just to pronounce it Coldstream. We'll just call it the Coldstream. And so they wear one button, 111, down the tunic. The second one found at the Grenadier Guards wear 2 buttons, then another 2, then another 2, then another 2, and so on. You can tell also by on their collar. I can't remember what the symbol of the Coldstream is. The Grenadiers is a bursting bomb, a grenade, because in most regiments they took the tallest men, formed a company, roughly 100 soldiers, on the basis that the taller ones had a longer reach, could throw the grenade that much further. Of course, grenades had been invented about 1700 at Granada in Spain, where they're called grenades. But the Grenadier Guards, there was a minimum height requirement, and then there was the King's Company of the Grenadier Guards, who were even taller than that, all had to be 6'4" or something, except officers, who could be miniature. But I think that's fallen by the wayside. They've had to relax these height restrictions. Then, let me see, the Scots Guards formed shortly after that. Now, you don't have to be from Scotland to join that one, any more than you have to be from Coldstream to join the Coldstream Guards, though there is a bit of a connection with Northern England for the Coldstream. And then the Irish Guards, founded in 1900 during the South African War, when Queen Victoria visited Ireland and got a rapturous reception. Even though Maud Gonne said, "Shall we start a revolution?" Well, nobody wanted to do that. Even though Irish nationalist politicians tended to be against the war effort, she had little difficulty getting recruits. So she only came to Ireland twice, if I remember correctly. And Ireland was very much part of the United Kingdom. The British Army were completely safe there. It was considered a desirable station. 1915, during the First World War, the Welsh Guards were founded, and they preferred if you're from Monmouth or Wales, because it was dubious whether whether Monmouth was part of Wales or part of England. And that's that. But they haven't put them in order, unfortunately. Quis separabit, motto of the Irish Guards, who will separate us. Oh, it's easier if you look down here, actually, on these memorial wreaths. Cymru ambeth to the Welsh Guards, Wales forever. Nemo me impune lacessit, the Scots Guards. Okay, nobody wins with impunity. And that thistle, the symbol of, I can't remember which battle it is, when they were being crept up on in the middle of the night, and the enemy stood on this barefoot. Most people were barefoot in the Middle Ages, and let out a blood-curdling shriek in agony, which alerted the Scots. So the enemy lost the element of surprise, and the enemy lost the battle. But of course, a hardy Scot would have suffered in silence and not calling out in pain. Okay, so this is the Grenadier Guards. There we are. On his Swaki Malipons. Shame upon him who thinks badly of it, with a garter again. Okay, here's Irish Guards with the shamrock symbol, as in St. Patrick used that to demonstrate the Trinity. You tear off one leaf, they all die. And of course, St. Patrick was from Great Britain, probably Wales, the west coast of Great Britain anyhow. Wales as such didn't exist. And then we got the Welsh symbol, the leek, because the battle of, if I got this right, Crécy, the Welsh troops of King Edward III fought in a leek garden and distinguished themselves by their valour that day. And then, okay, so this is the Coldstream. Okay, it also got Oniswaki Malipons as a symbol. So there we are. So I remember a Remembrance Sunday years ago coming here, and there's some old Welsh Guards, and the Prince of Wales came along for a brief memorial. He is the Prince of Wales. Lots of these regiments have colonel in chief, and they're usually a member of the royal family. So it's not a substantive rank, it's an honorary rank. I mean, Prince Charles, he was a substantive officer in the Royal Navy, but he left that absolutely years ago, not in the army. But sometimes you see him in an army or an RAF uniform. But they do distinguish between these substantive and honorary positions. I remember Prince Andrew saying, in his honorary rank in the Royal Navy, then he'd be treated with plenty of deference. However, sometimes in substantive rank, he'd be given a tongue lashing if that's what he deserved, because he'd fouled up in some way. So it's very good that we can distinguish between them and realise we do not have to be bowing and scraping to these people. They are ordinary, they do have limitations, and sometimes they get it wrong, of course. So don't imagine that they're all super talented, they even necessarily want to be royalty. I think, they're sane enough to realise that they're not Superman, they're flawed, they don't actually deserve this adulation. I've heard Prince William and Prince Harry say this in interviews. Okay, so perhaps that's enough from the Horseguard Parade, and you may even have learnt something. Goodbye.